for today. So with June being not only the month of Father's Day, but also Men's Mental Health Month.
Oh, yeah.
And you being a male, that might be earth-shattering information to you. But
Well, that's me. I'm a man. I had to double check.
anyway, I thought we would talk about that. Maybe even starting out with your thoughts of the difference between mental health with men and women. Because you're the token man, so you
right.
get...
So I represent all men.
You represent all men just like I represent
this one's for you
all
guys.
women. That's right.
Yeah. That's a really, really broad topic. I think in general, so first of all, just to clarify, we're going to be speaking in generalities. It's important to remember whenever you're talking about groups of people, the variance within a group is almost always bigger than the variance between groups. So we're going to be making general statements about men, general statements about women, understanding that the rule does not invalidate exceptions, and that there are always tons of exceptions to what we're talking about.
Well stated.
Thank you. But I'd just like to preface that once at the beginning so that we don't have to keep prefacing it every time we make a statement.
Right, exactly.
So the pattern that I've seen is that men, particularly since I've been in the field, are a little bit more skeptical toward mental health, toward therapy, toward receiving treatment than women. That's something that I've seen. And I think that there are a lot of reasons for that. One of them that's pretty new, that I think is especially true of younger men, is that recently, as therapeutic language has become more commonly used among people, I think they've had personal experiences where people that they've dated or friends and family have weaponized psychological language against them. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying, oh, hey, I think you're a jerk, that's not enough. It's, well, you're a pathological narcissist. And I watched 3 hours of YouTube documentaries talking about like all of the ways that you're a horrible person. And I've had countless men come to me for therapy, and it actually kind of breaks my heart. They come to me for therapy, and their biggest question is, am I a narcissist? And that actually is really sad to me because these men clearly aren't. So, I mean, I do the obligatory go through the DSM and talk about the diagnostic criteria. It's like, okay, I don't think you meet these.
Right.
But when they have people in their lives who tell them that there's something wrong with them, they believe it a lot of times. And so I think they're skeptical toward psychology and toward the mental health field because it's being weaponized against them. I also think they're skeptical because men have trouble asking for help. And the field of mental health is a helping field.
Yeah. Well, two things that come to my mind. I definitely work with a lot of women who come in and say, I think he's a narcissist. And I take a deep breath. And, at some level, general statement, some of us, all of us have some measures of narcissism or self-assuredness. And so the experience and exchange, the interpersonal experience and exchange does not necessarily, as you indicated, give evidence that it is diagnostic.
Yeah.
And so helping people, words matter, language matters. So trying, as I'm working with people, recognizing that and reframing that and not, previously we talked about the icks or the red flags. And so,
right.
Just because somebody doesn't present on the front end as charming, kind, sensitive, loving, loyal, doesn't necessarily mean that he or she is narcissistic. So that is, I agree with you. I think the more educated the populace is, the more we use that language and weaponize it both ways, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Just like the same when somebody goes, you're gaslighting me. And that's just a phrase right now. So it's almost like anything I say that may disagree with you, right, is you're gaslighting me. And much of that, I do believe, gets projected onto men. So it becomes a delicate balance when we're working with men and women.
Certainly, and I think it goes both ways. I mean, I've also had men say, oh, my girlfriend is borderline.
Correct.
Right. When it's like, she just missed breakfast and she was grumpy that morning. It's like, oh my gosh, she's so bipolar, she's so borderline.
Exactly.
Whatever, right?
Right, yeah.
But I think that men when they suffer emotionally and they suffer mentally, they're way less likely to reach out. Kind of like I was saying.
Because I do believe men suffer more in isolation. We women are socialized to connect.
Yeah.
And I think men, even going back to John Gray's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and he talked about men going into their cave and trying to figure things out before they come out and re-engage.
Yes.
And I think on some level that's probably, I don't know if it's genetic per se, but I mean, I think it's hardwired into men.
Yes.
Because the male brain is different than the female brain.
It is. Yeah. And when it comes to emotional processing, something I think it's really important to remember is men may express emotion very differently, but that doesn't mean they don't experience the emotion. I think...
Say that again, because I think that's important to... I think that's really important to highlight.
It's easy looking from the outside to come to the conclusion, just based off of what you see, that men don't experience emotion, or that they don't experience emotion the same way or to the same depth. And what I found is that that's not true at all. It's that they don't express emotion maybe the way we expect, and so we make a false assumption that it's something they don't experience. But one of the absolute gifts that I've been able to receive as a therapist is to sit with these men and build rapport and encourage them to actually open up. And when they open up, I'm always amazed at the depth and subtlety and nuance they have to all of the experiences in their life. And it's almost this incredibly moving experience every time, because you can tell when they're talking that it's the first time that they've articulated this to other people. And I think that there's two main reasons for that, at least in my experience. I think the first thing is that men are not good at asking for help because they don't practice.
I agree.
And the other thing is that when they do ask for help, a lot of times they're rejected. So I think it goes both ways. I think that they're bad at it, and you can't get good at something without practicing, right? But then the reason they don't practice is because they have experiences, usually early on in their life, where they try to open up emotionally, and they are punished for it, either socially or in their interpersonal relationship.
Hadn't ever thought about that in those terms. So I'll have to sit with that and think about that. But it makes sense to me.
So asking for help is a skill. Like, there's good ways to ask for help and there's bad ways to ask for help. This kind of mirrors what I find with people who have very agreeable personalities. The pattern of someone who's very agreeable is that they like to avoid conflict, right? So they tend to be very kind, very compassionate. But if there's a problem in their life, instead of resolving it, they kind of run from it, and resentment builds. And then eventually, the agreeable person gets pushed so far that they address the problem, but they haven't practiced addressing problems throughout their life. They've practiced smoothing things over, putting things under the rug, being kind, being sweet, and being mediators. So when that time comes that they finally blow up, they are very cruel, very inarticulate, and they just have this massive blow up that doesn't help.
Very unpolished.
Right. And I think the same thing happens with men when it comes to asking for help. I think that we, whether it's socialized or it's innate, I think it's a bit of both. We want to be strong. We want to be independent. We want to take responsibility for the things that happen in our lives. And we want to try everything possible first before asking for help. The problem with that is that usually the problem gets so bad and so deep because we've been trying a million different things and trying to solve it on our own for so long that when we finally do ask someone for help, it's like this big trauma dump. Yeah. Be like, oh, I lost my job 3 months ago. I don't have any purpose in my life. My girlfriend left me, and I don't want to be alive anymore. And it's like, then they finally open up to someone, and someone's like, wow, that's a lot. I don't know what to say about that. And then he feels rejected, right? Because he finally asked someone for help, and they didn't know how to help.
And, John Gottman talks about when help is offered, men predominantly are less open for influence.
Yes.
So then it's, I do this dump, tell me what you think, or just here's the dump. And then do this, do this, do this, do this. And they're like, nope, not going to do that. Right?
Yeah.
It's really, it's kind of back themselves into a corner, I think, in many ways.
I think so. And I think that the way that we talk to men is different. Like in an optimal world, the way that we talk to men would be different. So one thing I've noticed that's really subtle but makes a big difference in session is a lot of times when I'm talking to a woman, when she's describing her experience to me, her emotional perception of that experience usually takes center stage. So in addition to here's what happened to me, also here's how it affected me. And almost naturally, that sort of is the thing that we focus on in therapy because that's the thing you have control over. And also, I think women are more articulate when it comes to talking about their emotional understanding of things because they practice it more often. You know, they tend to externally process more. They tend to talk to their girlfriends and things like that. Whereas with
Because that's the way we're socialized.
Yeah.
To do that.
Right. And it's socialization. It might also be hardwiring. I don't actually know. Probably a combination of lots of
both,
factors.
right.
But we observe these differences. Yeah. Whereas men, I find something different, which is that the best way to validate the experience of a man that I've seen is to validate the experience, not the man's perception of it. So it's a really small change. But when a man says, hey, all of these terrible things happened to me, instead of saying, I'm so sorry that that had such an impact on you, it's more of, wow, all of those things really suck. Those things sort of objectively are of the nature to make someone suffer. And that is really tough. So I'm almost ignoring, like not putting the emphasis at all on his perception of what happens. I'm saying what happened to you was bad. And it makes sense to me that you're upset because of that. But it's different than saying, oh, well, the fact that you're upset, like that hits me really hard and I connect with you based on that.
Right.
A lot
so
of times...
just the validation of the experience rather than the compassion that we offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for men, a lot of times what they need is, wow, that really sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Like, yeah, that just sucks. And I understand, like, it's totally rational for you to be feeling the way that you're feeling because that sucks. That's it. And a lot of times they go, oh, I thought I was crazy. I go, no, you're not crazy. You're not crazy. That's terrible. That's terrible. And a lot of times because they suffer in this isolation because there's this, what I think is a dual process that keeps them from asking for help. The more isolated you become, the more disconnected you become from reality. And you start to wonder whether you're crazy because you're feeling this depth of emotion inside of you, but people on the outside are treating you like you're not. And so you start to question yourself, right? Like I feel this deep sadness. I feel this deep loneliness. You might have heard like the male loneliness epidemic is a big thing.
Yeah.
But I feel this deep loneliness, but everyone's treating me like everything's fine. So maybe there's something wrong with me. Like, why should I feel lonely if everyone's being nice to me? If, I say, hey, I feel lonely, and someone says, toughen up or whatever. Or someone says, everyone feels lonely. That's just how it is.
Right. Get over it.
Yeah. Get over it. Yes, I feel lonely too. I'm miserable too,
Right.
Like as if it's a problem to be opening up.
That's right.
So.
Or it'll pass, which again, I think we tend to then minimize the impact that it has. Because my experience, but also hearing what you say, and we know that men use fewer words than women in life. There's research about men use fewer words in conversation than women. So when men speak, we really need to listen to what they're saying because they're not going to go on and on and on like we women do to fill in until you can grab a hold of something.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I have definitely noticed that in session. I've noticed that active listening looks very different when it comes to men. A lot of times my version of active listening when it comes to men is interrogating what they've told me, asking clarifying questions, saying, can you tell me a little bit more about that? I don't understand that. Or can you help me flesh that out? Whereas with women, it's a lot more of understanding the depth and the nuance of what they are expressing. Because sometimes it's complicated. Sometimes there are pieces that don't make sense and just getting a sense of what they're telling you. But for men, it's totally different. It's almost, if you were to look at it from the outside, it doesn't look like listening. it almost looks more like, I don't want to say like an argument or a debate, something competitive, but that's the way that you can interact with men that is actually listening.
Yeah.
Like you're engaging with their ideas. They feel respected and listened to because you're doing that.
Sometimes I tell clients this, but I think anecdotally it's probably more with men. I said sometimes when I'm engaging with you, I feel like a dentist because I'm trying to pull things out of you. Like, tell me more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's really my need, and it may not necessarily be theirs if I can be more attentive to what they're saying in the moment. And listen for what the metacognition is, or what the meta communication is, what they're conveying with their fewer words.
Absolutely. And one of the questions I found that's really good for that is, how did you come to that conclusion? So tell me how you came to understand that. Tell me how you came to believe that. Because almost always there's a story, or sometimes a long history of stories. It's been my consistent experience in my life that X, Y, Z can happen. And that's why I believe this. And what I found when men open up is I find them extremely persuasive. Like overwhelmingly when people come in, people might have a misperception about the therapy world that if you're mentally ill, there's something wrong with your rationality. There's something wrong with your logic. And most of the time, that is not what I found. I found men who struggle because they're anxious or because they're depressed, and they proceed to tell me how they became that way. And there's no part of the story that's a question mark. It makes perfect sense when they explain it to me. Well, I'm depressed because I don't have purpose in life. It's like, well, how are you not supposed to be depressed?
Right.
If that's the case.
Right.
And
if you're wrestling with that existential angst.
Right. And I know you were asking earlier about the difference between what I've seen in young men versus older men. And I've definitely seen that existential angst and purposelessness, I think even more in young men. Because in previous generations, and this is actually a question I'd like to speak to you, there were societal roles clearly cut out for men and women. And there were a lot of cons to those societal roles. There were lots of people who didn't fit them, but they were at least there. What I found in the modern age that's really perplexing is if I stop and I ask a young person, I say, what is the purpose of a man? What is a man supposed to do? They have a really difficult time answering. I don't know, like whatever you want. It's like, okay, but everyone's purpose is unique. I'm asking in general, like what is a man supposed to do? Crickets.
Right. Because what we would have said historically is now women have stepped into that role as far as, I don't need you to be a breadwinner. Right. I don't need you to be a provider. I don't need, yes. and women will say, I want a partner, but that's different than it used to be. Even in terms of back in the 50s and maybe even a little bit in the 60s, because we had Leave It to Beaver. So, you know, the cleavers, that traditional,
yes,
she stayed home and he worked and you had one big happy family. And now, you're right, those roles are so blended. And what I have found anecdotally is that when men, and I tend to probably work with older men, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, when they feel as though they cannot provide for their family, that is most crushing.
Yeah.
Right? Because even though the roles have changed in this society, I think that's still kind of a innate sense or need to be able to provide and contribute. And so when they can't, whether through, depression that becomes non-functioning or anxiety, which interferes, or, whatever, they're just at a loss.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some startling data came out very recently out of England, where they did a meta-study on Gen Z, like young men and women, Gen Z, and the women for the first time were actually out-earning men.
And what are the ages? Remind me the ages for Gen Z.
I believe that it's 20 to 35.
Right now.
At least in that setting.
Okay.
I think the true Gen Z cutoff is like 1996.
Okay.
But anyway, they defined it differently in this study.
Got it.
So it was
Okay.
young people, sort of early in their career. So these are people that are fewer than 10 years into their career. And women are actually out earning men in England.
Wow.
And women are more educated than men. So when it comes to young men and young women, it's funny, like I'll hear professors and people who came from past generations talking about a world where they talk about discrimination and they talk about, women and other people not having rights and things like that. And it's just so funny because that world is so alien to me. Like, it's not like I think that they're lying or not telling the truth. It's just like, that's nice, but I didn't grow up in that one. Yeah. I grew up in the world where men are out, or where women are out earning men. Like, that's literally what I experienced. And are more educated, like sort of do better in school. It really kind of seems that, there's been a shift. And now we're kind of asking, okay, so, and when I'm asking young people too, the question about the purpose of a man, men have trouble answering, but so do women. I mean, you can sit down, you can ask this, you can say, hey, so you have an amazing career, you're educated. Why do you need to be with somebody? Like, what is a man for? What do you need a man for? If you can provide and you can protect and you can take care of yourself and you can have children.
Absolutely. I was going to say that. Yeah.
There's nothing special about a man, actually,
Right.
if you take those things away from him. Or if there is, we don't know what it is.
Right.
What is it? And the sad part is that, especially when men are going through job loss or like failure to launch is a big thing. They're asking me, well, what is my purpose? Because I don't know what it is. Nobody's told me what it is. My parents say I can be anything I want, but that's not actually an answer. And I go, yeah, that's something we have to find. And individually, it's like a tough journey. But there are big social, like moral and spiritual issues, I think, also at play there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then and that'll be for another discussion, because that then takes us into how do you make meaning out of this kind of wandering in life, and has to do with identity and meaning and, what's my purpose, all of that. And I think that dovetails into, especially with questioning identity and purpose, then dovetails into a sense of loneliness.
Absolutely.
And we know that there's significantly higher rates of completed suicides of men versus women. Although the good news is that between 2023 and 2024, the male suicide rate went down 2%. So,
So we're doing something.
Any shift in that, that direction we're grateful for. But what do you think is the, if you will, the solution or the answer or the invitation for men in terms of coming out of their own loneliness and isolation? How do they do that? What's the 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. So that is the golden question. I think if we have an answer to that, we can really work on the problem. So in my view, I'm biased as a marriage and family therapist, but the meaning and purpose in my life comes from my relationships. And so I think the first step that I try to do when I have clients who are really facing loneliness and they don't know what their purpose is I say, you need someone to live for, someone to work for. That's not yourself. Friends, family. I mean, one of the things I like to do when I see someone who has depression symptoms is I try to rule out external factors. I try to say, okay, so you're really sad all the time. Makes sense. Do you have a single friend? Do you have someone to come home to? Does anybody care about you in your life? And that's step one. And there might be reasons why the person has difficulty forming relationships. Maybe traumatic things have happened to them in the past. Maybe they feel they have really low self-esteem. Maybe they think they're ugly. Maybe there's lots of reasons that they don't have relationships.
Maybe they're autistic and social connections are difficult.
Yes. And in a world where social connection is becoming increasingly rarer,
Yes.
then messing up is more costly
Yes.
than it ever has been. And so all of those things contribute to the loneliness. So I help equip them with skills and say, okay, well, let's work on our social skills, right? Let's practice facing rejection. because you're going to face a lot of rejection, and it's going to hurt more than it ever has before, because it's really going to feel like the end of the world when you don't have other friends, when you don't have a group of people that you hang out with. Get you connected to a church, a community organization, volunteering, anything. Get you out there and find someone that you can connect with, even just for a moment, because that will give you purpose. And then I think, this has been my experience, but I think it's true of all people to a certain extent. You don't know who you are. You don't have an identity unless you have relationships with other people. It's like, it's a truth in physics, right? In order to pinpoint where a point is in space, you have to describe what's around it. In order to give a coordinates, there's an origin, which means there has to be something else. There isn't just one thing. One thing can't exist. Things exist in relationship to each other. And so if you don't have an identity and you don't have a purpose, well, try figuring out what it is by going somewhere else. Until you find something outside of yourself, I don't think you can know.
Wow. That immediately gave me this image of, sometimes we do eco maps with clients, but it gave me just an image of having a client do a sheet and putting themselves here, and then who's around. And if nobody's around, how do you bring them in? To where do you start? I think that's vital.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a cautionary tale, what I see a lot, especially in younger people, but older men to a certain extent too, who've lost those relationships in their lives, is they look for the next circle out, and sometimes they look way too far. So I don't have any friends, I don't have any family, but I do have a nation. So the way I can participate is through political activism. So I can join an ideology. I can be extremely right-wing, or I can be extremely left-wing, and then I can be in comment sections with people, and that's something, right? I'm not alone in my room anymore, so that's something. And a lot of people look for purpose there. I think that there are useful avenues for those things, but what I would caution against is putting your whole identity and purpose in those things. Because without the people in your immediate vicinity to ground you, to show you who you actually are, to hold you to account, to help you become a functional person, then you might end up on an iPhone camera somewhere. You might end up as a viral clip, and I've seen a lot of people go down that route. So, a lot of times it can be a cheap substitute for true connection. Is this ideological adherence or political activism or being part of the machine. So I try to help people out of that too.
Yeah, I think, vital to do so. So in closing, and maybe say more just about grounding men and getting them connected in this circle rather than out here. What's the hopeful statement for men, and what would be the statement for individuals in their lives in better understanding and supporting men who especially are struggling with their mental health and in isolation and loneliness? Bring us home.
Purpose in your life comes from doing things for other people. That's what love is, I think, especially as a man. If you want to love someone, then do something for them, serve them, be there for them. So when you wake up in the morning and you feel like you're worthless, you feel like there's no purpose to life, understand that waking up in the morning is an act of faith in the people around you. It's a way to serve them. You do have a purpose because everything you do matters to the people around you. It affects them, whether you see it or not. And in a deeper way, it affects the entire world. So it is important that you get up in the morning. It is important that you do something because other people do need you, even if they don't know that they do.